Begin recording. Again, welcome to this Akashic Trance Work e-workshop on soul fragmentation and healing trauma across time. This is a workshop, so it's interactive. I would love to hear from you. Feel free to share. Feel free to speak up. Feel free to interrupt me. I will just kind of go on and on about these concepts. So please feel free to jump in. And I would like to start with a general question for all the people that are here about soul fragmentation. And Sarah, I think that you and Astar were talking a little bit before I jumped on about some of your experiences with soul fragmentation and your understanding of it. And I wanted to invite you to share some of that stuff because it sounded really interesting. And then I wanted to ask everyone else that's in the room about their experiences. Would you mind sharing?
Well, back in it was about 2012. I took a diversity class at Wayne State University, and we were looking at just different cultures, heritages, medicine wheel, all different kinds of things. And a group of individuals that had actually lived in Detroit and moved into Detroit, which were called the Hmong, would do a lot of these processes. And before they had any work done in the medical community or anything like that, they would make sure that they had soul retrieval done. And it was really funny because I actually a few years later saw this on Grey's Anatomy, and I was like, oh, maybe it's trying to tell me something again. But in this class we learned that there was actually a significant portion of those individuals still practicing in Detroit at the time, but a very specific community of people in Detroit at the time. So it was interesting to learn about this in different cultures and heritages, even at Wayne State University in 2012, because most people weren't talking about these things at the time.
Do you know anything about their underlying beliefs? I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but I was just kind of curious because I'm not familiar with them. Do you know anything about their underlying beliefs around soul fragmentation or how they perform their practices?
From what I remember, I know there was, sage involved. There was, just kind of different healing practices. It could take, a while to do this process. But it was really trying to make sure that all of their being had come back together from lifetimes past, or, they didn't really explain too much about it, but just that they were integrated in order to, continue to do whatever, process they were doing. So let's say, somebody had a serious heart problem and had to have, treatment for that, or they were experiencing, a state of depression or whatever it may be. Before they could interact with any other community of any type, what they needed to do, or have any healing done, they had to do a specific process. And that's really what I remember from that long ago. And I'm glad that I got exposed to that at that age, but it's been obviously many years. But that's what I can remember up to this point, is that it was very, very important that they were whole and integrated before, going, especially in a different state of mind or in a different, state of being.
Yeah, it's very much in alignment with what I've come to understand and what we've been practicing. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate you sharing. Is there anyone else who'd be willing to open up? I know at least a couple of you are familiar with the idea of soul fragmentation. I'm going to call out Heather because Heather and I have had many conversations about soul fragmentation. In fact, I believe that before I even started engaging in this practice, Heather was actually talking to me about some of this stuff. And Heather's one of our original Akashic Trance Work initiates, so we've been connected for a little while. So it's interesting the development of this modality from the earlier days to now over a fairly short period of time. So Heather, I want to ask you your perspective, your views on soul fragmentation, if you're up for it. That's okay. You can just chat too if you want to share any of your thoughts. Sorry to call you out. It's always important to breathe. We will be doing some relaxation and grounding practices today. It's always important with all of these things to really just relax. This is a very informal place. We're just here to kind of connect. You don't have to jump in, Heather. I don't want to put you in the spot too much. But Heather and I have had some interesting discussions, and I've had a lot of interesting discussions with different people about the idea of soul fragmentation. Does anyone else want to speak up? Jason or Laura, do you have any input or thoughts on soul fragmentation? Do you have any experience with the concept? Laura, I don't think you and I have talked about it too much in the past.
No, just a little bit when you did my Akashic record reading. It came up a little bit, and I was asking you what it was. That was the first time I was ever exposed to it, actually.
Right. I do a section in one of my Akashic record readings, the Akashic pathway reading, where I actually look for a soul fragment. And that will kind of lead into describing how I do this process and how I've come to understand how this works. We're here, Heather. It's all good. If you want to share, feel free to jump in. There is a dialogue going on. If you're watching this later and I'm just kind of staring off into space because I'm watching the chat over there on the side, so I apologize for the gaps. Maybe I'll edit those out if I'm not too lazy to do that. So yes, let's all spend some time just kind of collectively breathing and relaxing and syncing our energy a little bit. I think it's really important to just be present for each other, these experiences, so that we can really get the most out of it. I'm going to talk a little bit about.
Okay. I'm on now.
Hey, thank you.
I don't want to interrupt you. I need to turn down my speakers because I have two devices going so I can talk. Okay, so soul fragmentation to me, from what I've learned and sort of can feel somatically still, because I'm pretty sure I have a pretty decent fragment or split within me. Sort of like a stream, like our stream of soul and consciousness is like coming down into our experience and manifesting, but like almost like a dam in a river, or like a part of us not being able to be accessed sort of stops the flow. So it's like, not like stops it, but inhibits you completely embodying like who you're kind of meant to come here to be. I don't know if that makes sense. But absolutely. I'm done now for now.
Thank you, Heather. Yes. I love your visionary flow. I love the way that you describe how energy moves, and it very much resonates with my perspective on things. Jason, I want to open up some space too. You don't have to express if you don't want to, but I want to make sure everyone gets a moment to really kind of express. I'll leave it open to you. I'll talk a little bit about my experiences and what Astar and I have come to do through soul fragmentation study and through soul retrieval processes. Oh no, I can't hear you. You're muted, I think. I can unmute you if you want.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Hey.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't really know what soul fragmentation is. However, as I told you, I just did mushrooms the other day. And one of the parts of that experience that was really strong for me was this feeling, and I guess this is sort of backed up by other researchers, but this was, it felt like my DNA was sort of being unlocked, and that there was sort of ancient intelligence manifesting in like different states that I'm not normally in. And in a lot of it, I just had this sense of sort of having a conversation with like, not really specific, it wasn't like past lives exactly, but more like different kind of evolutionary animal, ancestors or whatever, just kind of coming through. And so that's just putting me in a mindset, I'm interested in this topic. I don't really know much about it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. A lot of the earlier work that Astara and I did before we developed this modality more in depth was working with psilocybin. Psilocybin's an amazing teacher plan. It does really put you in touch with that inner wisdom, that Akashic wisdom, that larger perspective. We have so much cellular memory in our DNA, so much stuff that we're carrying forward. And whether or not we believe in reincarnation, if you just understand the basic principles of epigenetics and how we carry information in our DNA and how we actually change our DNA through our actions, through our experiences, has some really interesting implications. So thank you, Jason. So I wanted to just talk a little bit now about our experiences, Astara and myself. Astara, did you want to share your perspective on soul fragmentation at all? Would you like me to just kind of tell our story?
Oh, sure. Go ahead, tell a story. I could share too some more after that if there's anything that you leave out.
Okay. So essentially, as most of you know, we've been doing this trance work stuff for a while. And trance work is essentially the practice of going within, of accessing different states of consciousness. And if you've worked with me at all, I've probably talked to you about alpha and theta and delta and all the mechanics of going into these states and the techniques and the different visual exercises that we use, these purpose temples and all these concepts. And if you're not familiar with those, we have a book coming out. It's all in there. We can tell you about it if you want. But that's not why we're here today. Today I want to talk about something that kind of came about accidentally through those practices, which is this process of soul retrieval. And it's really interesting how it came about. And I will go ahead and try and describe the process as faithfully as possible, given my memory. And this was a while back. It's really interesting how memory and time and space work in these trance states. And it's kind of a different topic, but also to be explored and also relevant. So I do trance work primarily with Astara. She and I, we go back and forth in these different states. We record one another. We communicate with one another. And sorry, I clicked something weird. Okay. Can you all still hear me okay?
I can hear you. I think it was with me. It just tried to unmute, but we're all good.
Okay, thank you. So Astara and I primarily work in these trance states. We do a lot of really amazing, powerful stuff all the time. You might call astral traveling or astral exploration. So some time ago, I was guiding Astara through a trance state, and I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, what we were doing is we were working with people who had passed. We often work with making connection to our ancestors, trying to establish a dialogue. And these can be ancestors that have passed recently or that have passed a very long time ago that we never even met. And I believe we were actually trying to connect with your father who recently passed. Is that right? And
Yes.
yeah, and that's a really intense, very emotional connection, right? We have a lot of stuff with our parents, all of us. It's a very, very visceral experience to connect with a parent who's passed. It's very emotional. So I'm trying not to mess with this mic thing too much. So we were doing that work, and I was guiding Astara through a trance. You know, she's in a relaxed state, and I'm kind of in a alpha trance, I would say, and just channeling and communicating and guiding her. But I got pretty deep. And after a while, I began to visualize within my own inner space, my own astral space, being in my heart space. And that's something that we talk about in Akashic trance work, kind of our primary created astral space, our heart center, our safe space. It's one of the underlying foundational principles of the work that we do. And I was in that space, and, you know, I brought a star in to that space, and, you know, she's my partner, so that's easy to do. And I became aware even while I was guiding her, of something outside of this imagined creative space that I built. Because outside of these spaces that we build, these astral spaces, is the void. And that sounds kind of scary, the void. It's just all the unformed, unknown stuff. It's where things get lost. Everything gets lost out there in that void. So I became aware of something looking for a star from out there. So I opened myself to the experience. I'm like, okay, I don't really know what's happening right now, but I'll go with it. You know, this is a safe boundary for me. I'll open this boundary and see what's coming through. So into this space comes an animal guide. And I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. I don't want to share that information. If Astara remembers, I'll let her share it, because these experiences are very personal and very private, even though they're kind of coming through me. I always, want them to be confidential. So an animal, a jaguar, yes, a jaguar, a very powerful guide. We work with guides, guide beings, animals, ancestors, spirits. We work with them quite a bit in Akashic trance work. So they're very important. And it seems that when I do this soul retrieval practice with people, that guides are involved. It's almost like these guides, these spirits, these beings are out there holding these fragments for us. It's just what I've experienced. I can't necessarily explain it. It's just what we've seen. So a guide comes in and gives her something. I think that it opened its mouth and there was something on the end of its tongue. And it was something of symbolic importance. It was a symbol. It was a shape that I was seeing, but it was for her. And I was able to describe it to her, and it had a lot of significance to her, even though I don't necessarily know what it meant, me personally. And I was able to present it to her and help her to reintegrate it as a fragment. It was very much identified as something she had let go of, something that she had pushed away, and not let go of necessarily in the healthy way that we want to release. We do a lot of release work in Akashic trance work, but more like compartmentalized, pushed away. So that was essentially the process that we discovered, that I just kind of essentially channeled in around soul retrieval, around soul fragment retrieval. And since, I've looked into it more and I've read on it, and typically speaking, it is something that is done shamanically. And there are a lot of shamanic practices that we do in Akashic trance work. I wouldn't call myself a shaman. I haven't studied with a shaman. But we've received a lot of knowledge, a lot of connections to the universe that are very similar to these practices. So it's interesting how when we work in these trance states, how these abilities, these knowledges, these skills become unlocked because they're a natural part of our experience. And many people, many healers and such experience this, and it's not something that I intentionally set out to do. Like I intentionally set out to be a trance worker, right? In many ways, like I wanted to study trance states and inductions and brainwaves. I didn't set out to work with guides or to do soul retrievals. It's just something that happened. And that's what, to me, makes it feel more authentic, because I didn't choose it. So in many ways, I didn't really choose trance work full on, but that's a whole different story that I can tell you guys a different time. But I want to talk a little bit about the psychological and spiritual implications and possible causes of soul fragmentation and soul retrieval, and what it could mean. And again, any of you who want to jump in and offer a different viewpoint or some input, I don't pretend to be an expert on this. I just know that I do it and I experience it and I've seen it. So there are many other ways this can happen. So let's talk a little bit about trauma. Trauma is something that happens to us in life. Difficult things happen. Pain happens, suffering happens, loss happens, grief happens. Most of the people who are drawn to trance work, for whatever reason, have been diagnosed with some form of post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't know if it has to do with the personality of person that begins to look inwards, or maybe it's just something else, but it's very true that there is a certain type of person that is more affected by trauma than others. It seems to be the case. So, I felt that sneeze coming on. Sorry, guys. Thanks. So there's a certain type of personality that seems to be more prone to PTSD. Maybe that's not true. Maybe some people are just harder. They are more resilient, or maybe they're just less sensitive, and maybe the trauma does affect them in a different way. But those of us that experience trauma and are affected by it deeply, that carry it with us, we are a specific type of person that can also access our higher awareness, the highly sensitive type, the psychically aware, creative, artistic, dreamer types. That's who's drawn to this work. And when you allow yourself to fully access that inner space, you can use a lot of interfaces to connect with our consciousness. And the concept of the soul is an interesting one. And we could spend an entire workshop, an entire year talking about the soul. But I always had a concept of the soul as being sort of a finite thing, sort of a single discrete unit. So the idea of a soul fragmenting never really fit with my paradigm of understanding, right? Whether it was from a strictly sort of biological perspective where everything is psychological, or from a metaphysical standpoint, it never made sense to me until I began to understand and experience how trauma affects us and how we dissociate from ourselves. I think everyone that's here has experienced at some point in their lives disassociation or dissociation. I can never quite get the difference between those two terms right, but we've all experienced that feeling of not being associated with ourselves, of not identifying with ourselves, of feeling other, or feeling alien. And it can happen for a lot of different reasons. If we're experiencing a lot of trauma, of stress, it's a coping mechanism that we use to survive, to step away, to observe ourselves from the outside. This, I believe, is the fundamental mechanism behind soul fragmentation. When something happens to us, we have to put that aside sometimes to be able to move through life, to be able to continue to function. This is true with children and adults. With children, they tend to compartmentalize and push away because they don't have the proper understanding or perspective. And that's a really important understanding for us to have about childhood soul fragmentation, is that it happens not even so much that the child wants to suppress something, it's because they can't really understand why something would be happening to them, why somebody who they trust would be betraying them, or something like that. It's a very basic level of understanding. And even if it's something that isn't harmful, even if it's something that is supposedly good for us, it can still be traumatic because we as children don't understand. And that causes us to disassociate, causes us to disconnect from part of ourselves. And the reason that this happens, I believe, is because when we push away, when we disconnect from part of ourself, we don't have a way to disentangle the positive cellular memory, the positive experiences that were happening at that time, or the positive aspects of our personality. We can't disentangle that from the crappy thing, from the ugly thing. So we just kind of take it all as a lump, cut it away, and push it as far away from ourselves as we can. We disassociate. And over time, that disassociation becomes part of our personality and no one notices. Unless it keeps happening over and over again, continually changing us. And then once you've been through this cycle of disassociation so many times, you're kind of walking around like a zombie. You're fractured, you're fragmented. And that manifests in a lot of different ways. It manifests sometimes severe depression, severe anxiety. Some people become full-on sociopaths. I mean, that's the ultimate disassociation. They've cut away so much of their experience, so much of their trauma, that they've lost all of their empathy. That's a theory that I believe might hold some weight. And there definitely are some chemical realities here, some concepts around oxytocin production, and et cetera, but it's just really interesting how we can get these pieces back, because it's not through, there are a lot of ways that we can clear trauma, we can heal trauma, but the impactfulness of this soul retrieval process, it's really interesting, because there's something about how spirit or our psyches keeps those things safe for us, because it's still part of us. It's part of us that needs reintegration. But what happens when we don't reintegrate? So this is an interesting part of our discussion that I'd like to have. Imagine that this has been happening to you, not only you. Yeah, feel free to share, Heather, feel free. Yeah, feel free to jump in and I'll read it out for you. So just imagine.
Jump in really quickly.
Yeah,
With
go ahead.
that.
Go ahead.
It's taken me years of looking at working in like actually mental health. That's what I chose to do. And now doing what I consider soul healing is really going back and looking at those beliefs and starting to reintegrate parts of that with myself. I've spent probably 2 years really looking at that and trying to pull those aspects back of myself that serve my my highest good, and looking at those things that I pushed really far away. And it has been doing it just this way has been quite the battle of trying to find those things. So finding other techniques to be able to do that is really helpful, because I will tell you the process that I've had to do was very slow and really having to examine myself. And sometimes that was almost too critical of self, trying to bring that back in. So learning a different way to do that's really helpful, because for me, it's taken a long time to find some of those pieces. And marijuana did help me with that and getting in touch and talking to myself to be able to do that. So just thought I'd throw that out if that was helpful to anybody. Marijuana did help me kind of reach that other level to integrate those a little bit more over the last few years.
Yeah, stuff like that is very helpful. Marijuana, psilocybin, there are a lot of teacher plants out there. A lot of people work with ayahuasca and DMT. There's so many different tools and medicines that we can use. So I appreciate that. And, we have other processes that we use too for trauma healing. We have an entire modality that we've developed. And it's kind of interesting, because this soul retrieval process doesn't fit specifically into some of those modalities that we've developed, because we believe that trauma release, trauma healing should be actually a slow, gradual process. We could actually push ourselves towards very quick trauma release if we wanted to, but we have to think about the impact on our bodies, the toxification process. And I think that it should be slow. But when we're at the point where we're ready for a soul retrieval. Just want to make sure that I'm addressing everyone in chat here. So when you're ready for a soul retrieval, it's actually a very quick process because I'm going into a trance state. I'm present with you, and I do all the heavy lifting, so to speak. So it takes really maybe 10 minutes to do. But the integration period afterwards is very important. Excuse me. When I do an integration with someone, usually there's a period of about 10 days, maybe even up to 30 days afterwards, where there's some very specific care recommendations. If you think about, it's interesting, Sarah, that you mentioned surgery earlier, because in a way it is a form of surgery. It's a procedure that we're doing on ourselves. We're connecting with a symbolic link to that fragment. We're opening ourselves to the possibility of bringing that back in. So there's a lot of different things that could be done, a lot of different ways that this practice could be engaged. It could be done through an induced trance, where I take someone through and help them find their own fragment. And we have done some of that, but the process where I go through and actually find these fragments without trying to interpret them too much, what I've come to understand is when you have someone else doing it, and you could actually, if you were to become a trance worker, if you were to guide other people through these things, you could actually do this for people too. It's just about learning how to trust your visions, because I've come to a point where I allow my inner space, my visionary space, to manifest naturally without too much judgment or analysis. And as I look at it, as I read it, I might go a bit deeper and provide some analysis, some interpretation, depending on what it is. But ultimately, I'm presenting you with a symbol, an object, a concept, and that's your fragment. So I could talk about this some more. I could talk about this indefinitely. Heather, did you want to share something? We'd be more than happy to hear from you if you would like to share. Oh, there we go. So Heather shared this experience with me before, some early stuff that's happened, and I appreciate you sharing this. When she was 2.5, she had a near-death experience where one of her kidneys stopped working and started filtering toxins. She was hospitalized for 3 weeks on heavy doses of steroids, started losing hair and one spot on top of her head. And she was on steroids until she was at the age of 5. So yeah, you can imagine she'd be out of her body, often talking and thinking about things. She started losing her hair at age 14 and started looking more inward. And she feels fragmented. Yeah, there's a lot of fragmentation happening. I mean, imagine being that young. At that age, you should be playing and interacting and developing. That's actually a critical age, a critical point, they call it, before the age of 5. So definitely a lot of dissociation. You would have very literally had to completely dissociate yourself from your body, completely disconnect yourself from your body in order to be able to function. So yes, thanks, Heather. So we have about 45 minutes left. And what I would like to do with this time, because I can talk about these theories and these concepts in depth, but I believe that the best thing that I can offer you is to actually show you how this works. So we have, how many people do we have in here? 7 participants, 6 people, other than myself in here. I would like to actually go into a trance state and find some soul fragments for all of you. Now, because soul fragments, our Because soul fragments are very private, personal things to each of you, I won't be identifying or calling out any of you, and I won't actually know. I won't know who these fragments are for. I'll try to do one for everyone. I think we have time for that. It's possible they might all be for you. It's possible that somehow these symbols represent different fragments for each of you. Maybe one fragment is for all of you. Maybe they're all for all of you. There's no hard and fast rules about these things. But what I invite you to do as I go into my inner space, into my astral space, and I bring forth these images, these symbols from myself, from my inner self, from my Akashic awareness, see if they have any meaning for you. See if they have any relevance for you. See how they make you feel. It's an experiment. We're doing some experimental work here today. So I'm curious very much about any honest feedback that you might have about the experience. So you don't have to do anything at all. But if you would like to, I recommend that you sit back and allow yourself to breathe and relax and visualize the space and the things that I described if you want to. So if anyone needs a minute to step away, I'm actually going to take 1 minute myself and get a coffee refill. So if anyone wants to step away for a moment, then we'll come back and we're going to try something interesting. So I'll be right back. All right, we're back. Hope you're all nice and comfortable. Yeah, Heather, it is really brave. It is a really important part of the healing process to share our stories. I think it's one of the most important things that we do in trance work is hold space for one another while we express. It's a really important part of the release process. I do think that this soul retrieval process is complementary to the release work that we do. In a way, it is sort of either the beginning or the end of that process, depending where you are. So I'm hoping that as we delve into our soul retrieval process, that you find some relevance there and some things that can help you, because I know that some of those childhood things can be really deep. Most of us have a primary fragment of soul loss, so to speak, which is around childhood innocence and our ability to really enjoy life and to thrive. It's one of the primary things I think that abused or neglected children or children that have been through traumas like that really suffer from, is that ability to really just sit back and feel okay with life. It's a primary wound that a lot of us carry. So the way this works is I'll be breathing myself down into a trance state, and I'll do my best to interact with the screen and keep track of what's going on. But when I go into a trance state, I tend of, literally disassociate from the screen so that I can go completely into that place. And I'll be bringing all of you into my inner space, into my heart center, which is what I do when I go into these trance states. And then I'll be surrounding you with unconditional love and compassion. It's always important to seal in these practices in some way so that we feel safe and protected. I don't like to work in astral spaces without bringing in that intentionality of love and compassion. Very important things: love and compassion, peace, joy, happiness. They're not just words. These are actual invocations. These are actual tonal frequencies that we attune to: love, compassion, joy, peace. What else is there? So I'm just going to breathe myself down to this state now. And I'll be trying to find 7 fragments, because I know there's at least one person who registered who didn't attend. So I'm going to try to find a fragment for everyone, at least one, and maybe they're all yours. I am bringing you all into my heart space now. This place may be perceived as a bubble full of light and water floating in an endless gray void. Within the bubble, half of the space is full of water, warm, soothing waves. The other half is light, like a blue sky. I bring you all in to float relaxingly in the water, relaxing like small children at play. I surround you now with divine, unconditional love and compassion and pure joy, pure peace, pure, relaxed, connected, presence with self. All is well here. The heart space is the wellspring of safety, of security, of peace, joy. I bring 7 in here, 7 of you. One who is not present, but is still present. Outside of this bubble is the gray void where all lost and missing things are, all forgotten things, all suppressed things, all ignored things. Let us rest into this heart space together for a moment. Feeling the waves of peace wash throughout our collective light body. May feel like tingling waves of relaxation radiating out from your heart center. Just allow yourself to tune in and connect, opening yourself to the possibility of receiving Soul Fragment today. And if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. We're here in this space together. I now seek out into the void for first fragment. All fragments are held by guides, beings. Sometimes they are animals, sometimes they are people, ancestors. Sometimes there's something else, stranger. But this first guide comes in very forcefully, and I could feel the energy of this guide coming before this session even started. While I was downstairs in my body, getting coffee. It's been very insistent. I wonder whose fragment this is. This elephant comes, an Indian elephant, like Ganesh, adorned with jewelry, beautiful creature, but powerful. The male elephant, a bull, comes in. He's looking for one of you. On top of his great head, between his ears, there is an object. It's a black pyramid. comes before you, one of you, maybe all of you. And he bows his head, he bows before you like your royalty to this great elephant. And with his trunk, takes the black pyramid down and places it before you. And yes, the elephant is on the surface of the water. This is astral space. And there's a black pyramid floating there. It's a perfect shape, perfect pyramid. You can see it rotating in space. There's something in there. We are receiving information now. It's perfection. It's a perfect. All angles are perfect. Everything fits in its place. The mathematics of that structure are perfect. The logic of that structure is perfect. It's perfect in the way that only an astral form can be. Its carefully intricate design is the fragment that was lost. It's perfect, but it's also sharp. Its corners cut. There is pain around this perfection, pain around this elegance, this intricacy. If this is your fragment, you may wish now to receive it into yourself, into your heart, into your light body. There may be some sharpness to it, clarity of vision, clarity of insight is a very sharp thing sometimes. It can be incisive, cutting, but when we have the proper perspective, our heart-centered awareness, clarity brings joy because we see things as they really are. If this pyramid is yours, if you wish to accept it, take a deep breath and breathe out, releasing all tension in your body. Breathe in again and breathe out again, releasing all tension in your mind. Breathe in again, releasing all tension in your heart. And allow the energy to enter your body. Allow it to move through you. Allow it to integrate. And if you accept the fragment, you see that the elephant dissolves into gold dust and floats away. And if you choose to reject this fragment, it's not for you. You see the elephant wander away to someone else or back out to the void. We now seek out for another fragment. The creature who comes in is very elegant. A girl, it seems like, a dancer, but she doesn't really seem human. She's more like the idea of a dancer. She moves fluidly, almost like a sketch. There's a illusory nature to her. She moves like a painting, like a flip book made of paintings. It's very interesting, much more abstract than what we usually receive in these visions. She comes up before one of you. She's two-dimensional, and she holds out to you a present, but like a sketch of a gift, a child's idea of a gift. There's something here about the nature of generosity, the nature of giving and of receiving. The understanding that a gift may not always have the value that was put into it monetarily. The true value of the gift is in the energy put behind it. This seems obvious to most of us. The idea that it's the thought that counts, but it's really true. There is more love in a scribbled picture given to a mother from a child than in a much more expensive gift given by someone who has no real emotional investment in the process. Does not mean the gift, more expensive gift, has no value. If the person who is receiving it wants it or needs it. But the simple creative flow that goes into a made gift, into something that is invested in with time rather than money, goes beyond words. If this is your fragment, you may wish to receive it now. There's something lost here in this understanding. An inability to have gratitude for the gifts, the simple gifts that one has. A feeling that they're inadequate. If this is your fragment, take a deep breath and allow yourself to receive it. And as you do this, and you receive this, the girl becomes more whole, more human. And she walks away. If this is not your fragment, she takes it with her. Still a cartoon, still a flipbook of images. Is this your fragment? Are you able to have gratitude in your heart? If you receive this fragment, allow it to fully integrate now into your light body. Take a deep breath in. And relax all tension in your body. Take a deep breath in. Relax all tension in your mind. Take a deep breath in. Relax all tension in your heart. And the girl is gone. We seek out for another fragment. The being who comes in is like a king, like Henry VIII, large, overweight, covered in gold jewelry, weighed down with gold. He actually has some gold bars in his arms. He's carrying these gold bars. And he has this rosy look, like he's just been drinking too much wine for the past 30 years. But he looks happy. He's got this jovial look to him. He's kind of humming a little tune as he waddles towards one of you. He's not an unpleasant being, but definitely has no inhibitions. He has no limitations. And he holds out one of the gold bars for you. Seems like he doesn't really want to give it to you, but it's yours. He's been holding on to it for you. He's kind of like the bank. Maybe all of these things that he holds on to are for other people. Maybe there's a bar for each of you. Maybe just one of you. This is a deep wound. Are you able to receive the financial abundance that is yours by birthright? Are you afraid of becoming that overweight king who seems like he spends all of his time just wasting away? Is that what you're afraid of? In his other hand, the king has a scepter, a wand. The king is also a magician here who has all the tools he needs to be able to manifest whatever he wants, to use the abundance, but also to enjoy it. There's no purpose to abundance if there's no joy in it. It's all about just making money, never about enjoying it, never about enjoying space and time. Then of course we would reject it. Loving beings would rather have time than money, even if that time is not spent in the most opulent ways. But it's okay to receive one's due, to receive the resources that one needs to thrive and relax in life. To be able to rest without fear of where the next meal is coming from. To relax without fear of where one will be in 10, 20, 30 years. Do you want this gold bar? It's being offered to you now. Allow it to come in to your energy center if you choose, and watch that king wander off. Seems that there are a lot of people out there with gold bars in his keeping. No wonder he's so opulent. If you want to receive this fragment, it's yours. You can feel it moving in to your light body, connecting to your root center, to your root chakra, allowing you to receive the full abundance, the full wealth that is your birthright. You are allowed to thrive, allowed to have the resources to do the things that you want. It's okay if you don't want this fragment right now. It's not always time, and maybe it's not for you. Maybe you're just fine how you are. And if you do receive this fragment, it's time to fully integrate, to bring it in. And breathe deeply. And breathe out all tension in your body. Breathe deeply. And breathe out all tension in your mind. Breathe deeply. And breathe out all tension in your heart. And as the king vanishes, you call upon another fragment. Into this place comes a large stag. We call him a deer, but this creature is majestic with antlers, massive antlers that you would think it wouldn't be able to keep up. A real 3D animal would not be able to support antlers like this, but this is like the spirit of the stag, the spirit of the deer, the spirit of the forest. It's a very majestic creature, and it comes forward. It's centered, floating between those two antlers. There's a musical instrument of some kind. I'm seeing it as like a lyre, like one of those old guitar-like instruments in the Middle Ages, but it could be anything. I can hear a simple strumming tune. If you can hear that tune in your head, I believe this fragment is for you. There is music, a forgetting of music in this fragment, forgetting of how music connects one to one's primal nature, pushing it away because it has difficult memories, it has sadness associated with it. Simple music, hearing it from someone or creating it. Frequency and sound are very important. The sounds we attune ourselves to, the music we listen to, the vibration of the energy around us. It's very critical to our experience. It informs our experience and creates it. The simple acoustic music here has special significance. It tunes one with primal masculine energies within. It's a feminine voice calling to the masculine. It's an element of balance here. If this instrument is yours, you may choose to receive this fragment and hear the simple tune in your mind and your heart. Feel it aligning all of your cells. Bring the music back in and allow whatever feeling is associated with it to flow out your body, your light body, as you breathe in and release any tension in your body. Breathe in and breathe out any tension in your mind. Breathe in and release any tension in your heart. And the stag leaves, whether or not you accepted the fragment. We now call for another fragment. Comes quickly. A child, a small child, but agile, 5 years old perhaps, a boy, very gangly. He tumbles more than walks, dances more than anything else, hyperactive, he might be called. Light skin, dark brown hair, green eyes, freckles. Everything about him is awkward and gangly. He kind of floats into the space. And he has something. He's digging in his pocket for something. He's holding 3 objects in his hands. It's a jack, an old jack from the game that kids used to play. A single 6-sided die, and a quarter. He seems very excited about these 3 random objects. He's showing a game now. There's a surface he's created in the air, and he's throwing down these 3 unrelated objects. And he's showing us how, even though these 3 unrelated objects seem to have no significance to one another, they're actually producing an infinite number of variables each time that you throw them together. There's an infinite number of variations between these 3 objects, and they create a sort of synchronicity. Each time you throw each of them, they produce a different value. There's an understanding that this child brings with his innocence, a brilliant understanding. There's a mathematical significance here that's beyond my ability to fully express in this space. The arrangement of seemingly random variables between seemingly unrelated concepts. There's nothing that would connect a die to a jack to a quarter. Each of them has a single common factor in that each time that they're thrown, they produce something different, a different configuration that may have meaning to you. How different variations can produce different effects. It's related to simple innocence, lost innocence, and the understanding of power of unrelated variation. You may wish to receive this fragment and feel the boy laughing up at you as you take them. He scampers off. Or maybe they're not for you. Maybe they go to someone else. Either way, the boy scampers back off into the void, and if you've received this fragment, you can feel the joy rippling through your body. Simple, highly intellectual, complex understanding of the universe and how interrelationship works. There may be judgment, feeling of being judged, of not being understood. But in this case, it's your own understanding that matters. If this fragment is for you, it's time to breathe deeply and release any tension in your body. Breathe deeply and release any tension in your mind. And breathe deeply and release any tension in your heart. And we now seek out into the void for another fragment. This one comes in, very interestingly, small flying saucer, tiny. If it holds any beings, they would have to be no more than 6 inches tall. It's more of a cartoon idea of a flying saucer than any kind of actual machine. The idea of something from space. It's coming before one of you. And it hovers before you, and a mechanical arm extends from the bottom of this device, holding an old teddy bear, worn out, missing ear, missing eye, half the fur is rubbed off. It's kind of a pitiful thing, but seems well loved. There's a happiness to it. Even though it's worn, it knows that it was valued by the child who loved it. You can see now that there is a little cockpit to this flying saucer, and there's a tiny alien there, tiny green insectoid alien looking up at you expectantly. Seems this was found in a faraway place. It was thrown away because something happened. It was forgotten about. Simple affection, simple love, cozy, cuddly, warm feelings, the ability to be close to someone or something else, to not worry about appearances, to just openly receive. Someone flung this bear very far away out into space. This alien being is expressing that it doesn't appreciate us throwing our stuff in its backyard. If you wish to receive this simple fragment, take a deep breath and take it. Let the alien buzz back off to its own dimension. And receive this fragment into your heart if it's yours. Take a deep breath in. And release all tension in your body. Take a deep breath in. And breathe out all tension in your mind. Take a deep breath in. And release all tension in your heart. And we now seek out for the final fragment. We are resisting this image, but we will allow it. The being who comes in is a tall man. He's wearing a military uniform. Seems very ominous, very serious. We are evaluating if he belongs here, but he is safe. He is a guide and he holds something. He's holding what looks like a file or dossier, they call it, right? And he's standing right in front of you and he's clearing his throat loudly. There's an impression that he's not supposed to give this to you, but he can't keep it from you because it's yours. There's something secret here, something kept away, something others have not told you, or something you've been looking for the answer to that's hidden. There's a secrecy here, there's a hiddenness, there's the need to hide, the need to have secrets from others, the feeling that one is being scrutinized and carefully analyzed, feeling that one is not free or safe. There is some truth to these feelings because we are all controlled and restricted. This opportunity here is to receive some of this knowledge, to make sense of it. What is it that is being kept? What is it that we are keeping from others? What is so important that we must feel we must keep from others? Is it true? Is it important that we must keep our deepest selves hidden in secret? Does it matter what people in power think of us? Perhaps it does. It's up to you if you wish to receive the information. If you do, it may come as third eye information, visual symbolic downloads, shapes and colors and sounds, frequencies, and allow your mind to decode it in time. This is a message for the higher energy centers, but also a message for the lower self, a message about fear, a message about encoding one's experiences, about understanding. If you wish to receive this fragment, watch the man march off, and even if you don't, even if it's not for you, he leaves this place after delivering it to the person it belongs to. Allow yourself to receive this coded third eye knowledge into your light body. Maybe it's something others didn't want you to know, but it's still your knowledge. Everything is yours to access. All knowledge is yours to access if you choose. Take a deep breath now and release all tension from your mind. Take a deep breath now. Release all tension from your heart. And all together, all of us here, take a deep breath and release any tension in our bodies together. As I now send you out back to your own inner spaces with love, gratitude, and compassion to assist you in the integration of your fragments. So we've gone a little bit over. It takes me a minute to kind of readjust back to being human here in the 3D world. I'd like to ask for any thoughts or input on the experience. This is a very experimental process for us. We don't do this particular kind of thing a whole lot. And every time we do it in a group, it's very different. So I'm curious, any thoughts, any input? Laura liked it. Laura's a trance worker extraordinaire. You'll be getting certified soon, as soon as you get that test done. A star receives some clarifications and new activations. Sarah experiencing emotional release. Yeah, that's really, really important. That's really what these fragments are about. However you want to receive them, if they have any meaning to you, to receive the gift back, we have to allow ourselves to express the emotion. That's really what we're losing, is our emotional expression space. So whenever we do release work, whenever we start to work on ourselves, then yeah, we want to allow those emotions to kind of flow through us rather than just suppressing them. We want to allow them to move through. So I'm glad you were able to release. I want to speak about the importance of self-care. I didn't get to do part of it because I wanted to make sure we got everyone in, that we got all 7 of them in. So hopefully you who didn't attend, I know who you are, you know who you are, if you're watching, then you will have a fragment, at least one fragment that will resonate with you. But self-care instructions are very important. After any kind of trance work, we're really kind of moving in our spaces. And I don't know how much you were really engaging with what happened, maybe not at all, but if you did receive, and if you did go in and connect with what was happening, and self-care is going to be very important. So what I recommend highly is for at least the next 10 days, try to refrain from alcohol, try to refrain from too much processed food, try to really eat whole foods, really eat well, take care of yourself, drink lots of water, make sure that you're allowing yourself space to dream. Dreams are very important. Dreams are how we move into states of integration, of wholeness. That's where our deeper theta work happens. So anything that you can do to make sure you dream, things like avoiding caffeine or even cannabis for like an hour or two before bed. Cannabis is a great relaxant, but it actually does suppress dream activity for whatever reason. And also just making sure that you're sleeping enough and that you're sleeping comfortably enough, that you're having dreams. And if you do remember your dreams, it's good to journal about them as well. So just kind of keeping your third eye, your mind, as clear and active as possible is really helpful. And self-care, anything that you can do working with solfeggio frequencies. That elephant, Heather, came through very, very strongly. Like, even when I went downstairs to get coffee, I could really sense, I could feel the elephant being the first guide. So I kind of had to create some space to keep it out. But yeah, that pyramid one was really powerful. Flight anxiety, interesting. Oh, you wanted, okay, I get it. Yeah, it's a very forceful one, but there was a lot of power in that image. Laura, oh, you were connecting with some Indian deities. There's something really powerful in working with the Vedic pantheon with Ganesh and Krishna, Shiva, Shakti. A lot of really deep symbolic meaning in those archetypes. You doing okay, Heather? Bye, Laura. Thanks for being present. We do have to wrap up. So if there's anything that any of you would like to express to me privately, reach out, message me, check in with me, Heather. Let me know that you're doing okay. Yeah, good. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, share in the group, jump in the trance work group. We have the, the private trance work initiation group though, too. So, jump in there. Yeah, you've got this. We want to build more resilience, and I can see all the resilience growing in all of you that I've worked with, and it's what I want to see. I want to see all of us growing strong and thriving and all that fun stuff. So thank you, all of you, for being present. Much appreciation. We'll do more workshops like this in the future. We have classes and all kinds of things that we do. So we'll keep in touch. Thank you so much. Blessings.